My sister asked me to adopt her affair baby so her military husband wouldn't find out she cheated. She's been a serial cheater since high school. But this time, she expects me to save her from the disaster she created. Hello Reddit, I plus here. When I think back on everything that happened, I still cannot decide whether my family was cursed or just stubborn. It all started with my younger sister, a 29-year-old woman named Mara. She had a reputation from the time she was 15. People thought she was charming, bold, the kind of girl who could talk her way out of anything. What they did not notice, or maybe chose to ignore, was how destructive she could be. By the time I was 19, I had already watched her tear through 7 boyfriends. Not ordinary breakups. I mean spectacular, explosive ends because she was caught sneaking around with someone else. Every time I tried to warn the new guy, he would look at me like I was some jealous older brother who just wanted to control everything. Mara would turn on the tears, claim I hated seeing her happy, claim I was bitter because I could not get anyone to stay with me. The funny part was that I had been with the same girl since I was 12. Her name was Nia. We grew up together, survived long distance during college, moved in together after graduating, and now, at 32, we had been married for 2 years. But none of that mattered when Mara was playing the victim. People believed whatever she said. Eventually, Mara met a man named Ross, a 27-year-old technician who worked at an airbase 2 towns over. He was calm, patient, thoughtful, wildly loyal. The kind of man who asked you about your day and actually listened to the answer. For a while, I thought she finally met someone who would challenge her to grow up. Then he caught her cheating with a coworker. I was sure that was the moment everything would collapse. Instead, he forgave her. She cried in his arms, swore she was done with all the mistakes, said she would go to counseling, promised she would never lie again. 6 months later, they were married in a hall filled with white drapes and silver candles, everyone cheering like she was some redeemed angel who had shed her past. I kept my mouth shut. There was no point anymore. A year after the wedding, Ross enlisted for a long deployment overseas. I did not say anything, but the moment the car pulled away and he disappeared into the airport, my stomach twisted. I knew what was coming. Mara, without boundaries, was like a match tossed into dry grass. 3 months after he left, I heard from my cousin that she was seeing a new guy. A few weeks later, a different guy. At one point, she was floating between 2 men depending on who had cash and who had free time. I stayed out of it. I kept repeating to myself that I was done being the family watchdog. If she wanted to ruin her life, let her. Then last month, everything changed. At 8 in the evening, my phone rang. Mara's voice came through broken and rapid, like she had been crying for hours. She said she needed the entire family to meet at our parents' house immediately. No explanation. Just that it was urgent. I drove over expecting something terrible happened to Ross. My mother was a wreck as soon as I arrived. She kept pacing, clutching her hands. My father stood by the sink staring at the window like he was waiting for a police car to pull into the driveway. Mara sat at the table with red eyes and trembling fingers. She looked around at all of us, swallowed hard, and said she was pregnant. My mother gasped loudly and immediately started congratulating her. She thought this was a miracle, some joyous moment, but my father frowned at the table, like he already understood the hidden part of the story. I watched Mara wipe tears from her cheeks, unable to look anyone in the eye. Then she admitted the truth. The child did not belong to Ross. She had been seeing someone she barely knew, someone who had already blocked her number the moment she mentioned the possibility of a baby. My mother froze. My father sat down heavily, as if his legs gave out. Then Mara turned to me. She said the only way to save her marriage, the only way to keep Ross from finding out, was if I took the child and claimed the baby as my own. She said she would pretend she was helping Nia and me through the process of adoption. She begged me to agree. She said if Ross found out, he would leave her, and she would lose everything. I stared at her for a long time. It felt unreal that my own sister would ask me to lie, to uproot my life, to claim a child that was not mine, all because she refused to take responsibility for the chaos she created. She even grabbed my hand and whispered that if I truly loved her as family, I would save her from this one mistake. My father slammed his palm on the table and told her she had crossed every possible line. My mother cried silently. I pushed my chair back and told her I would not raise a child in a lie. Not for her, not for anyone. Mara's face shifted from sorrow to anger. She accused me of trying to punish her. She said I wanted her life to fall apart. She screamed that I was selfish, that I always hated her. I walked out of the house before the argument could grow uglier. Later that night, she sent a long message saying she would figure things out without me. She said if Ross divorced her, I should remember it was because I refused to help, but I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Because for once, I did not let myself get trapped in the disasters she created. What happened after that is still unfolding, and none of us know what Ross will do once he returns. But this time, everyone finally sees the truth that I have been carrying alone for more than a decade. Mara did not need saving. She needed consequences. And those consequences were finally coming. 2 weeks passed before anyone heard from Mara again. She went silent, which was unusual for someone who practically lived off attention. My mother checked on her every morning, only to be met with locked doors and unanswered messages. My father pretended he did not care, but every night I saw his truck circle the block near her apartment before heading home. Nia and I kept our distance. I did not know if Mara was planning to blame us for something or twist the story to get sympathy. She had done it before, and I had learned my lesson. Then one afternoon, my mother called me in a panic. She said Mara had suddenly shown up at their house with a suitcase and refused to leave. When I arrived, she was sitting on the living room couch, hands clasped, staring blankly at the floor. She looked smaller than usual, like all the fire that kept her running had burned out. My father sat across from her, saying nothing, which was worse than yelling. My mother tried to calm the air by offering tea and fruit, but no one touched anything. I asked her why she was there. Her eyes lifted slowly, swollen and red. She said Ross was coming home earlier than expected. The deployment had been cut short because several families had emergencies back home, creating an opening for others to rotate out sooner. Ross called her that morning with the news. He would be back in 10 days. At first, she tried to convince herself she could hide the pregnancy long enough. She thought she could control the timing, maybe claim the baby came earlier or later than expected, but the math refused to bend for her, and the reality became clearer by the hour. She said she told him she was feeling sick lately, so she could avoid video calls. She figured if she kept her camera off, he would not notice, but he insisted on seeing her that night to celebrate coming home soon. That was why she was sitting at our parents' house with a suitcase. She claimed she had nowhere else to go. She said she needed a plan. My father finally spoke, asking her what she intended to tell Ross. She crumbled into tears again. She said she could not tell him, said he would leave, said he would take everything. I kept my voice steady. I asked her what exactly she wanted from us because the last time she had a plan, she tried to make me raise her baby. She looked at me as if she expected sympathy. Instead, she saw nothing in my expression. She said she needed time. She needed a place to stay. She needed someone to help her think. She asked me again if I could reconsider the idea of taking the baby, but my father shut that down instantly and told her not to ask again. For the next few days, she lived in the guest room upstairs, moving only between the bed and the bathroom. Sometimes she cried so loudly that the whole house heard. Other times, she stayed silent for hours. I could not tell if she felt guilt or fear or just regret that her chaos had finally caught up with her. On the 5th day, she knocked on my door while I was visiting our parents. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. She said she thought she had a solution. She planned to tell Ross the baby was his. She rehearsed a story where she would say she wanted to surprise him with the news when he returned. She said he would probably be upset that she kept it secret, but eventually, he would be happy. He always forgave her. She believed he would forgive this too. My father stood up so fast his chair slid across the floor. He told her that lying again was not a solution. He said if she wanted any hope of rebuilding her life, she needed to stop dragging people down with her choices. But Mara shook her head and said the truth would destroy her. She said she could not live with that. On the 9th day, she vanished without telling anyone where she went. My mother ran through the house calling her name. My father searched the yard and driveway. I checked her social media, but everything was silent. Then, hours later, she sent a message in the family group chat. She said she drove to the airport. She said she could not stay there waiting. She said she was going to pick him up herself. My mother begged her to tell him the truth. My father warned her again that the lie would not hold. Mara did not respond. The next morning, we learned what happened. When Ross stepped off the plane, she ran to him, hugged him tightly, and cried against his shoulder. At first, he looked confused. Then he held her and asked if she was all right. She looked him in the eyes and told him she was pregnant. He froze. She said he stared at her for a long time, long enough that people around them started watching. He asked her one question. He asked how far along she was, and she gave him the wrong number. Not by days, not by weeks, by months. She panicked. She slipped. She miscalculated out loud, and he caught it instantly. People said his entire expression changed. He stepped back from her. She tried to grab his arm, but he pulled away. He told her they would talk at home. He carried her bags himself, not speaking the entire trip. She cried in the car while he stared forward the whole time. Later that night, he drove her to our parents' house and asked to speak with all of us. He was calm. Frighteningly calm. He said he already knew she had been cheating again. Friends had told him months ago. He enlisted early partly to get distance, hoping she would settle down. He said he wanted to believe in her so badly that he ignored every sign, but the dates she gave him at the airport proved everything. Then he thanked my parents for always welcoming him and said he would be filing for separation. Mara collapsed on the living room rug, begging him not to leave. She promised she would change this time for real. She said she could do better, be better, fix everything. He walked out without looking back. My mother cried harder than Mara. My father sat beside her, too exhausted to say anything, and I stood in the doorway, realizing something I had never understood until that moment. You cannot save someone who refuses to face themselves.